da 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 da.
Welcome to Artists in the Afternoon 3, The Right Passion and Purpose. I'm Dion McNeal of Rethink the Narrative Media Company, and on behalf of my partners and sponsors, the Esteem Award and Pride Index, Meek Productions, and Eban Man, thank you so very much for joining us for another round of Artists in the Afternoon. We were just here a year ago, and now we're back again, and we've got some new people who are joining us this year. It's just absolutely amazing to have you all here. And also, let me say this as well. Happy Black Gay Pride. Yeah. Absolutely. We are in a day and a time where not only the rights of queer people, but black people in general are under attack. And so it is so important that we have forums like this in order to get the word out, in order to express ourselves, in order to make sure that our culture does not die or is rewritten or whitewashed, for lack of a better term. So thank you all so very much for joining us. We have some amazing panelists here today. And so our first panel, we're going to just talk about this whole notion of the right. And do I mean the W-R-I-T-E or the R-I-G-H-T? I actually mean them both. All right, and so we have here author, poet, and spoken word artist of the Virgin to the Life series, John Collins. Author of Men After 10, Casey Hamilton. What's that all about, y'all? Writer, instructor, equity leader, Anare Holmes, and Atlanta firefighter.
That's correct.
Wow, okay. And Black, queer, non-binary artist, activist, and author, Dion Alexander McNeal. Let's give them a hand, you all. So, my first question is for John Collins. So, why John? You still a virgin, huh?
No, I've been at it a few years now, so no.
So tell us about you and tell us about your book series, Virgin to the Life.
What up, though? My name is John Collins. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. Navy veteran. Been in Atlanta probably about 10 years now. I think I wrote the Virgin to the Life series basically because I wanted us to have a love story. So that was just kind of something that I wanted to take a look at. You know, questioning love through friendships, our relationships with our parents, as they age, and as, you know, we get older and things of that nature, and how the roles kind of shift and they look at us in a different light. I feel we as gay people, or, you know, the LGBT community, we're here to kind of usher in unconditional love. I think we're the key to that, and the savior to our families within that whole role. So that's kind of what the series touches on, and what I choose to write about.
So, did the Virgin to the Life series come from personal inspiration, personal aspiration, or what?
Yes, it did come from personal experience. It started from a 3-page essay that I wrote when I was about 17. I used to keep a journal, and my mother, she discovered it one day when I kind of forgot it, you know, leaving, you know, rushing, getting ready for school. So that's kind of where the series evolved from. She found out I was gay. She drove up to the school, pulled me out of class, and was like, "Are you fucking men?" Whoa. This is what she said to me. So I was 17, we were overseas in Germany. You know, at that point it was fight or flight for me. So I was like, okay, I know I'm not gonna be able to, you know, rely on you guys once I graduate high school. So what's next? So that was the reason why I joined the military. You know, I wanted to have the different world experience, but that wasn't, you know, what God had for me. So it kind of took me on that journey to continue writing. I burned that notebook and, you know, just started a new path in terms of why am I here? You know, what is our purpose here as the LGBT community, same-gender-loving men of color. So,
Wow. So, fast forwarding, I'm not going to tell your age or how many years later, what is your relationship like with your parents now?
oh my God. So, it took a while. My dad was actually the first to kind of come around, like to go from saying now I have 2 daughters to,
Wow.
basically us. We speak every day. The questions that I was bringing to God in my mind, like, what are we going to talk about? How are we going to resolve this? What is my relationship going to look like? Because I grew up with both my parents. Me and my dad used to work on cars together. We used to go fishing. I'm a church boy, so what does that look like in his eyes and in terms of our relationship? So now, it's like he's waiting for me to bring somebody home to meet him. He asks the questions that, I talk to God about, like, what would I answer him if he was to bring this to me, in terms of who am I dating and do I want kids, do I want to get married? My dad asks me these questions. He's cool with that now. It's a matter of him saying, if you were to bring your partner here, if I was to visit your house with my wife, you wake up and you kiss your partner in the morning while we're at the breakfast table, that's your partner, son. I'm not gonna, disrespect that. That's love. So he loves me. Now my mother, we just got to a point this year where this is the first time she came to visit me at any place that I've lived at. Just bought a house. She's seen the house. We had a great time. She got to see where I did our first play. You know what I'm saying? And I got to explain what I actually do. She saw my accolades on my wall in my office. We still have, some few more rocks and reels to climb over, but me and my mom are in a place now where she respects me as a man. She, no longer holds the gay thing against me. So for those of you who are out there still kind of struggling with that, seeking that love for your relationship, just put it in God's hands. Continue to be who you want to be, for your family, and it's gonna work out. I'm telling you.
Wow, what an amazing story and an amazing journey. Do you know whether or not your parents have read any of your works?
My dad has read the first 2 books. When it gets to the sex scenes, he kind of has to turn the pages. But he has said, he has read my work. My mother, I think she secretly has. She hasn't expressed anything. I know she's read the first book, but the rest of the series, I don't know about that. But other family members, of course, I have, a cheerleading squad in the family that has read all my work, have come to the plays, supported, projects that I've done outside of writing. So, yeah.
Wow. It's amazing. You don't have to be a famous person to be a trailblazer. Many of us are trailblazers within our own families, because if it had not been for us stepping out and saying, this is who I am, it would not have perhaps cleared the path and laid the foundation for others who have to come behind us, no matter whether it's sexual identity, gender identity, or anything else. Someone in the family has blazed the trail, and that is indeed so important. Thank you for sharing. Now, Casey Hamilton. Men after 10. Now, growing up, I was taught one thing. That there's only one thing open after 10 o'clock, and since the pandemic, it ain't Walmart, it ain't Kroger, it ain't Target. So tell us about this whole notion of your book, Men After 10, and your literary genius.
Well, Men After 10 is a novel about how hard it is being black, being gay, and being online, in particularly this day and age where we have these apps that are designed to make it easier than it's ever been to connect with other gay men, but it can oftentimes feel like it's harder than it's ever been. So that's what I'm exploring. The stories are told through a group of black men using a popular hookup app known as Men After 10.
Wow. Oh, hookup app. What's that?
Well, sex is very important in the gay community, so I had to be raw and authentic and tell it like it is. So yeah.
So you mean people?
Don't you think sex is important for everybody?
It is.
Everybody.
Sex is very important, but I think for gay men in particular, it is it's such a bigger part of our world. I really do.
So you mean that there's an app that people can sign into and they can meet other people? Who's heard of such a thing? I've never heard of anything like that. I've never done anything like that either. So, in your book, what's the main takeaway that you want the reader to gain from those stories?
You know, I just want them to relate. It's not about me having all the answers and having everything figured out. These apps, they've been around for a while now, and they're going to be around for a while. So it's really just about relating to someone in the story, and hopefully having that. Because I know when I grew up, there wasn't people writing that raw about the real gay experience. I mean, most of what I learned on my own, and I was very naive. So I just hope people will find something to relate to.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And many of us, and I'm not going to tell anybody's ages, but there is a generational gap in the Black queer community, in the queer community in general, because of the AIDS epidemic that took a lot of our ancestors that would have transmitted the values that would have helped us to make the transition into this life. I don't call it a lifestyle, it is a life. And so the AIDS pandemic robbed us of those individuals. And so many of us had to learn by trial and error.
Yeah.
We didn't have anyone to show us the ropes. We didn't have anyone that we could confide in. And so now, as we become the adults in the room, the adults in the room, we want to make sure that we transmit those values to those who have to come behind us. It is so very important that representation indeed matters. So the street committee has been whispering that you're working on a sophomore project. Tell us how that experience has been thus far for you.
You know, it's totally different. My first book, I wrote the book, I kind of live by that quote. I think it's Toni Morrison that said it, write the book that you wish to see out in the world. And I wrote that. This was nothing but blood, sweat, and tears in this first book. The second book is a different approach. And, one thing that I'm really learning is that just because you have a story, does not mean that people will automatically give you the privilege of listening to that story. So it's a lot more work that you have to do. In reality, people do not read like they used to. And sometimes you have to meet them where they are. I recorded an audiobook version. But it's tough, so it's a challenge. It's a challenge. But
Awesome.
I just keep my flame going and keep writing.
All right, so can you give us a hint? Or is it too soon now?
It's definitely too soon, but I only write what I'm passionate about.
Okay, all right. So we know that in the near future, we will see a new book hitting the shelves from Casey Hamilton.
Absolutely.
All right. Author of Men After 10. So if you haven't gotten the first book, please make sure that you get the first book before you leave here today.
It's right over there.
All right, awesome. All right, so once upon a time, we lived in an era of don't ask, don't tell. But now we're living in an era of say it loud, I'm Black, queer, and I'm proud. And that don't ask, don't tell era, that was particularly to the military, but of course it spilled over into other public service areas. So, firefighter, right? Equity leader, writer. Tell us about
Gay superhero.
Gay superhero. All of the above, huh?
Right.
Tell us about Anare Holmes.
Wow. Well, first of all, I was always taught, you're gonna work or you don't eat, right? So the first thing that we do before anything is think about what we want to do for a career, how we're gonna make a living for ourselves. And so before I became a firefighter, I was a trained journalist. So I remember very clearly watching, how many of y'all, I'm old enough, I'm 48. I remember Walter Cronkite at CBS News, That's the Way It Is. When I was about 5 or 6, my grandmother bought me a desk, and I would gather up my papers, and I'd put her clip-on pearl earring. That was my microphone. And I would sit there, and when Walter came on, me and little Ray Ray was doing the news. When I would go to the pediatrician, they would tell me that who are you, young man? I'm Anare. I do the news.
Wow.
So I was always fascinated by the real life stories. My man's over here, I don't know how raw he gets, but I'm like, I remember Elin Harris and people like James R. Hardy talking about having sex scenes in their books. I don't know where the disconnect is with the generations. Like I said, I don't know how raw you get, but I've always felt like the real stories is where that was to be told. So I had a different world experience. I went to Howard University. HU, right? I went to Howard University. Decided I was going to major in journalism, and everybody told me, you ain't going to make no money, right? And they were right. You don't make any money on your first 2 jobs. Right. First 2 jobs. And you can switch a job in like 6 months. First job I ever made, $19,000. I had to work at Burlington Coat Factory to make the ends meet, but I had a mentor tell me, don't make the writing your hobby. If you're serious about making a career, because I had an opportunity to do a Sears management training program and move to Atlanta and make $36,000 at the time. This was like 99. Because they always tell you, you have to have a plan B. So I was applying for any job that I thought I could have, I applied for in college. And so that came up, and I had to make a decision. Am I going to take the $19,000 a year job, or am I going to take the $36,000 and move to Atlanta and take the reporting job and live in Indianapolis, Indiana? I'm trying to get out of the Midwest. I'm from Wisconsin. There were no black people. That's why I came to Atlanta. So I was like, I don't know about Indiana, but I had a person tell me, you better make your writing your thing. And then so we transitioned to firefighter. When I got to Atlanta, I'm like 30 years old. I was a print reporter. I worked for the 4th oldest black newspaper in the country, the Indianapolis Recorder. Wonderful opportunity that I had over there managing black press, that historical institution, and meeting people like Mari Evans and Tavis Smiley and a lot of strong Indianapolis people. That's where Madam C.J. Walker's plant was. A lot of strong history in Indianapolis. And so there I was at the historical black paper and getting everything. I did celebrity news. I did whatever it was in the black press, you do it. Because it's only about a handful of you all. So I was running about 4 staffers and about 10 freelancers to make that publication come out every week. Well, then I moved to Atlanta. Mr. Mays, who had purchased the Recorder, had a television station and a radio station there in Indianapolis. I will never forget the day that I was in the room when Kathy Hughes, he was selling his radio station to Kathy Hughes. And I knew, I said, you are watching, these aren't athletes, these aren't actors, this is black, excellent black business people making a major transaction. You are a witness to history. And so I started doing television because of that transaction. I started doing television. I would come on, do the Recorder headlines. My boss, Caroline Mays, who was the niece of Mr. Mays, had a show. I would come on, do the show, talk the headlines. And then when she was gone, I would fill in for her and I would host a program. So then that gave me the bug for television and radio. And I decided I want to be a television reporter because I want to do the news. But when I got to Indianapolis, they were not checking for me. They were like, you've been at that little black press over there. This is like a major market. This is like a major market. You got to go back to Macon and like maybe you can get you a little reporting job. And I'm like, I am not moving back to no small town. And so it got to the point where the journalism was not paying the bills, and I had to figure out what am I going to do because I had so much love for Atlanta, and I didn't want to leave. So then my father told me, I always told you should have joined the service because he was in the Air Force. You don't ever want to do what your parents do. But he was like, you could be an officer, you could be making good money in public affairs for the military. And I didn't, So I was like, I'll give firefighting a try. And sure enough, I got to firefighting, they found out I could write, and then they started having me work in the public information office. I was covering, I'd be out here, a fire would be out here, I'd be this is what's going on. You know, all of those skills, because I was prepared, it all kind of fit. And then so, like I said, by the time I joined the fire department, I'm like 38. So I was already, when I moved to Atlanta, I was already comfortable being openly gay. I had met people like Darlene Hudson and Marianne and Craig Washington, and I had started working with In the Life Atlanta. It's like, this is who I am. So it was not, so what I learned is, you know, however you handle it is how other people gonna handle it. I was always taught if you carry yourself a certain way, anybody looking at you can't help but to respect you. So when I came into the fire service, I knew I wasn't the only one. I knew I wasn't the only one. No. But, you know, because we live together and we interact together, and the whole point of doing this kind of work is to be a team and not draw attention to yourself, a lot of men do not reveal that part of who they are in the fire service. And so it's slowly changing. I see it changing with the newer recruits. I see it changing. So that's kind of how that happened. But I had to eat, so that's how
And it goes back to what you said, if a man don't work, he don't eat, huh?
Exactly.
So where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? When we read the paper, or not the paper, when we look on the internet in a few years, what will we find about Anare Holmes?
I'm in the affirmation business. I affirm, I empower, I inspire. The role that I may be in 5 years, I can't tell you what that will look like, but I can tell you that that's what I'll be doing, and that's what I have always done. Whether I was a journalist trying to broaden the perspective of, because some people don't think black people are human beings. They don't think that we have fathers that take care of their children. They don't think that we have mothers that read to their children. They don't think that we have family that accepts who we are, because they don't show you those stories. What sells in this line of work is our pathology.
Yes.
They want to see people dumped in trash cans. They want to see a father put their gay son, a black father put their gay son in a trash can. My father didn't put me in no trash can. My father always propelled me forward. So that's what I'll be doing.
Awesome. So representation matters in every aspect. Because one of the things I do love about being the trailblazer, breaking the glass ceiling, is that you may be the first, but you will not be the last. Absolutely amazing. Thank you for sharing. All right, yes, thank you. Dion Alexander McNeal. In your story on PrideIndex.com, you are described as a black, non-binary person thriving with HIV. We applaud you for just that alone. It's absolutely amazing. So please tell us about who you are and tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, I mean, where do I begin? Let's start there. Honestly, I wasn't at this point where I could say that I was non-binary and thriving. I think it took me a lot of time to get there, so I'll start kind of before.
Sure.
At that point, and that really was back in 2018, and probably a little bit before. I've just got out of my relationship with one of my partners, and it was the first relationship where I really discovered that I can be vulnerable, I can be transparent about my HIV status, I can say the word HIV publicly and not feel this sort of stigma that I was once feeling at the time when I was first diagnosed. And I was by myself, so I was like, okay, what do I want to do with myself? What is my story? What do I want to do next? And so I think the universe and God just kind of sent the right people in my life. And there was a gentleman who walked up to me along with the organization called Peoria Health Solution, and they were throwing this event called Artists Alive. And they were wanting folks to come on stage and share their story. And they knew that I was a patient that was going there. They knew that I was pretty charismatic and outgoing. And they were like, hey, would you be interested in sharing your story living with HIV? And I was like, let me think on that, actually, because I'm not in a place where I feel comfortable with talking about my HIV status. I don't feel like I know enough about it to really go out and be an example for another person. And after a few conversations with some friends, Blair and Bethany, they really had me think really deeply about, okay, if you're going to share this story, you know, remember that this is going down with you, so that you're going to be living with this for the rest of your life publicly. And are there any things that some people may not know about you as well, right? At the time, Illinois was HIV criminalization state, so if you were not disclosing your HIV status, you could be, criminalized for not disclosing that. And sometimes you can, and sometimes that's a battle, right? I hear he say, she say kind of thing. And I knew that I didn't have that issue because I always try to be as transparent about it, because I knew that I wouldn't want anyone, not even my worst enemy, to kind of have that experience. So I really looked into that and found the courage in myself, and I just decided to do this. I'm like, why not? Why not share my story? Why not get up there and talk about my experience living with HIV, the good and the bad points? And when I did that, it felt like a wave just came off of me, and just like, wow, this is what it feels like. And I'm like, I want to continue to live in this sort of warm, this sort of light. I want to keep doing this. And I kind of got some ideas with my background in mass communication. I'm like, I know a few things. Let me go on YouTube and create a channel and just kind of start to bring in folks who's been doing this work and not only share my story, but how can I allow other people to come on and share their story. And I've been doing that, and that's been giving me the courage, the power, and the energy to just get up there, even when I'm afraid, and just try to be like, okay, this is what it is. It looks really bad, and sometimes it looks really great, but this is sort of this human experience when we describe thriving. It's not always amazing. It's going to be some down points, but those down points are points that remind you to be humble and remind you that it's always going to go up.
I love that part, that thriving doesn't always look amazing. I love that, absolutely. So, for those of us, educate those of us in the room who may not know what it means to be a non-binary person, can you explain what that is, and again, coupling that with your life, explain to us, what does it mean to be a non-binary person?
For me, I got this question recently, actually through an app as well, and I thought it was such an amazing question, because I've never gotten that since moving here to Georgia. And I'll answer it how I answered it to the gentleman. And I was like, for me, being non-binary is I am a person, born male, and I'm kind of stuck in this body, and for lack of a better word, stuck, which means that when I show up in spaces, I may look male, I may appear male, I may talk male, but how I identify sexually and gender-wise is that I identify with a gender that's outside of male and female. So the expectation of what a man would do and the expectations of what a woman would do are not expectations that I see myself embodying, but sometimes it's sort of a fusion of both of those things, where some days I want to just not wear anything, and I just want to put on sweats, and I just don't want to wear deodorant, and I may not want to take a shower. And then there are days where I'm feeling more in my body, and I want to take care of it. I want to go get my nails done. I want to get my hair done, and I also want to do some things that may be not a normative of what a man would do. But I think bringing that down to concisely describing what non-binary is for me, it's really living your existence unapologetically. What I mean by that is that showing up as who you are, right? That I know that I'm going to be different, and it takes a lot of courage to wake up and just choose to be yourself. And sometimes it may not make sense to a lot of people, how I show up and what I look like and how I speak. But I think ultimately, as long as I'm okay with that being different and understanding that there is space for me, there is space to be a non-binary person, say that, yeah, this is what I look like, but this is not how I feel. I feel very girly inside. I feel very manly inside, and sometimes I don't feel like any of those things, and they just don't make sense to me when I think of how I'm showing up in spaces, because it doesn't define, it doesn't describe how I live my life. So to wrap that all up in one bow, it's really just being your unique self, but also understanding that there are these systems that are in play that describe us preconditionally when we are born, but as we get older, we start to understand ourselves a lot more and can really make those conditions and standards of ourselves and how we show up in the
You
world.
come into your authentic self. You come into who you are. You awaken to who you are.
Still awakening.
Still awakening,
Still
because
awakening.
it is a process that's
Yeah.
ongoing. And you know, a couple of things that we have done, put it like this, history, or those who are telling their version of history sometimes, have done us a disservice, because there has always been what Native American or indigenous culture called two-spirited people in the universe. There has always been this definition, this non-construct, this non-binary person that has always existed throughout time. And so it baffles me why we want to stick everyone in the same box. Everybody doesn't fit in that box. And so thank you for walking in your authentic self. Thank you for understanding who you are and how you are evolving. Because it takes many of us a lifetime, a lifetime to get to that place in space. So thank you so very much. So one other question. Where do you see yourself going forward? What's next for Dion?
I asked that question. I've been asking that question a lot lately. Specifically, where do I see myself in the next 5 years? And right now, I think that's choosing to be present, choosing to see the signs. I've been asking God and the universe every day to show me signs that I'm following my purpose and I'm going in the right direction that I need to go. And I think just showing up here and being here is a good indication of that. In 5 years, I would love to be helping people share their stories, specifically something you indicated on. The one who controls the narrative controls history. And I am really interested in developing a network that allows queer people, specifically trans and non-binary people, share their stories, share their history. And also tell the story of Robert Rayford, who was a young black boy who was later discovered had died from AIDS-related pneumonia. And so his story's not told, but his story's told in like these health journals that he was this gay black man, but no one really knows that. If you do your research, you're like, we don't know what he was, because at the time, that sort of health and that sort of intention and that sort of focus on black men was not really the focus of, generally the focus of America. They didn't care. So how can we tell the story of this young black boy who we describe died of this disease of serocopose, which is found in like older white male, is this young 16-year-old boy, but they discovered that he had AIDS or HIV within this, he was infected with that. And I think many stories like that exist. And I want to be able to create a platform and create sort of the structure where folks can come and do that and be the controllers of their story, be the controller of our stories, because we define history.
Absolutely.
So it's sort of kind of trying to move myself in that direction as best as I can, and trying to stay out of my way as well.
Yeah.
So, and that's been a challenge. It's a lot of letting go and being vulnerable.
That part.
Going through that.
Getting out of your own way.
Mm-hmm.
How many of us have ever experienced being in your own way? And things would flow so much smoothly if we could just learn to step aside and get out of our own way. Wow, what an amazing story. So this is one final question for all of you all. In a nutshell, if you had to give advice to those of us who are in the room, or anyone who's in the room, or anyone who's live streaming or watching this, what advice would you give them about the right passion and purpose, which is our theme for this year?
I would say you need to take some time to learn and hear your voice. Writing is about perspective and about voice. And in a world where people try to be like other people, you have something. There is something, the universe has it. There's something that you feel, there's something that you think, there's something that you emote that comes quite naturally. It is your voice. For you to move forward in anything, you need to hear it. As children, we have it. Sometimes it gets talked out of us because the parents and the caregivers think they're protecting us, so they want us to fall in line and do everything that may be contrary to what we know our voice is telling us. But this is the journey of life. When you get older, if you're blessed to live long enough, you find yourself going right back to the voice that you had when you came here. We always return home. So find your voice. And when you see your voice, shout it, write it, and you'll see how beautiful it looks on the page.
Awesome. Very nice. Casey.
I would say that writing, honestly, is hard as hell. It is full of unknowns. It is often underpaid and often underappreciated. It's hard. But if you write what you're truly passionate about, what you feel like you cannot leave this earth without saying, it makes it so much easier. So that's why.
I've kind of been on a sabbatical these last, 3 years in terms of writing and trying to fall back in love with the craft, the process, this gift that I feel God has given me. Like Anare said, we have a voice that's in us, you know what I'm saying? God speaks, he speaks to us individually. You know your love language with God. You know your relationship with God if you're a believer. I feel that, again, we as gay people, we should not feel guilty for demanding love. You know, God says the greatest of these things, the law that we're supposed to carry out is to love and to live amongst the nations peaceably. So with that being said, don't feel guilty for demanding the love that you know in your heart that you deserve. So
Awesome. And Dion, I'll give you the last word.
All right, I'm gonna look right into the camera. This is y'all folks. This is for y'all. But we're living in a very dark time, a time that is trying to pull everything out of you. Don't reflect on that. Like many of the people up here are saying, find your voice, practice those things. You don't have to be a producer to be worthy or valuable for those things to make sense. Like wake up, choose you, and choose happiness. Choose what makes you happy and follow that joy that gives you, whether it's I want to paint my nails, or whether that's I want to write, or I want to read a book, or I just want to sit in the sun and do nothing. Do those things, sit with yourself and allow that to come to you, but you don't have to always, find yourself producing. Really look to producing more of you into the world. I don't know who this person that said this, but be the example you would like to see in the world. And follow the 5 golden rules. So I think if you carry those 2, you'll go very far.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for John Collins, Casey Hamilton, Anare Holmes, and Dion McNeal.
Yeah. Dreaming, all that's on my mind is, oh,